Before iron shafts and bearings, power moved through wood. In today's AgedSkills history episode, we follow craftsmen cutting and turning a watermill axle from solid oak. Each cut defines a component that once carried the load and motion of a working mill. Here at the forest edge stands a 200-year-old oak, seasoned by wind and weather, which the miller has selected. The two forest workers have nearly completed their cut through the mighty, knot-free trunk. The miller is there too, with a bottle of Geneva. Wedges are driven into the kerf to keep it from closing under the trunk's weight. The felling wedges force the tree to fall in the desired direction. With this cut as well, wedges keep the kerf open. The trunk must first be dragged to the forest road by horses. It catches on a root and is jerked alternately left and right to pull it free. For further transport, a log cart is brought to the forest road. Farmers in the Hunsrück call it the Devil's Cart. Its heavy curved axle can be slid over the entire length of the trunk. When the lever-like drawbar is lifted, the heavy hook at the back drops down. The tree, tied at its midpoint, is chained to this hook. Now it hangs suspended between the cart's wheels. Its thick end is chained to the drawbar. At the front of the drawbar, the driver attaches the chain to the pulling harness. Something unexpected has happened. The oak, 65 to 70 centimeters thick, proved too heavy for the old log cart. After a short distance, one of the wheels broke. Now they must fetch the four-wheeled farmer's wagon with its brake, originally intended only for the steep mill road. With the heavy end forward, the trunk is pulled alongside the wagon, which has been tilted into the shoulder to stand as low as possible. Now it's prepared for loading. On the loading side, the front wheels and then the rear wheels are removed and laid flat on the ground. The axles are positioned on the wheel hubs, so the axle bolts rest in their bushings. Finally, loading beams are placed on the tilted wagon floor, and the two stakes are removed. The steel cable, wrapped around the trunk in a special way, has replaced the pulling chain once used for this task. For safety, the stakes are replaced. Using long levers, they lift the wagon at the axle beds to replace the wheels one by one. The trunk has been secured to the wagon pole with chains and blocks for the journey. The miller sits astride on top. At the waterwheel inlet, where the wheel turns hidden in its chamber, the mill stream must be kept ice-free all winter. The oak trunk is unloaded in the mill yard using the same method as loading. On the strip of meadow between the mill garden and stream bank, a wood pile has already been prepared. The rough oak trunk is placed on the wood pile to be processed. To mark the trunk, a process carpenters call snapping lines, the bark is removed in broad longitudinal strips. From the bark, the carpenter makes black pigment to color the marking cord. The pieces are pounded and mixed with water into a black paste. The cord unrolling from the reel is blackened in the container. On the debarked surfaces of the trunk, chalk lines marked on the right and left indicate the first two cutting edges. The wood must be hewn away to the marked lines. Following old carpentry techniques, the trunk is first notched. The notches break through the light sapwood and expose the dark heartwood within. The closely spaced notches make it easier to process the sides, which bulge most at the tough root end. The two rough-hewn side surfaces must now be smoothed with the broadaxe. The axe is heated over the fire so its thin, razor-sharp steel won't crack in the winter cold. The hewn surfaces become mirror smooth. After turning the log, Work begins on the two remaining bark-covered sides, which are first measured. Here a third measurement is needed across the smooth surface to establish the center points. Using simple hand methods, the work must be executed to millimeter precision if the drive shaft is to rotate accurately in the mill. After notching, hewing, and smoothing the last two surfaces, the trunk takes the form of a massive square beam. In the next steps, the squared oak must be shaped into a round cylindrical axle. With the beam standing upright and precisely aligned, the four corners are hewn away one by one. The octagonal shape of the mill axle gradually emerges. At the axle ends, holes for the turning cranks are being bored. To ease the work with turning chisels, the 8 corners are first chamfered. Finally, the cylindrical form of the axle emerges, which must now be finely turned during finishing. Now the cranks are aligned and driven precisely into the axle's center. On the workbench, the axle is lowered into position on its center points. The farmers helping with the turning bring their turning bars. The tool rest, which supports the turning chisels during work, is hoisted into place. Little protruding wood remains for the chisels to catch and remove. Alternating constantly from one end to the other, the 2 men guide the turning chisels along the rotating axle until it's completely smooth. The 2 axle ends, which will be given a conical shape, require special processing. The taper and length of the journals are marked out. The upward kick of forcefully applied chisels has often caused severe injuries. The iron journals must now be fitted into the turned axle, on which it will rotate in the mill machinery. The iron hoops, heated here to a glow in the fire, will later bind the axle journals. At the harder root end of the axle, which must support the waterwheel, a two-winged journal is fitted. The miller's son has just brought it. The sawn slot matches the dimensions of the journal's two wings. The borehole at the end of the slot loosens the wood, which can now be easily chiseled away. The center hole must be widened for the journal's thick neck. The heated and cooled hoops clamp the fitted journal tightly in its slot. Flat beechwood wedges ensure a secure fit. the other end of the axle, a three-winged journal is fitted. The three wings provide a firmer grip, but rot can also penetrate the three-way cut more easily. This journal is therefore placed at the axle end that sits inside the mill house. The fitting proceeds in the same way as with the two-winged journal. Once the new waterwheel axle is installed in the mill machinery and attached to the waterwheel outside, the miller can resume his grinding work.